Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Herman Vespertilio. One of the only models in the Herman line that I have not reviewed yet. Now, I want to let everybody know, if you're not familiar with Herman knives, I want you to understand what tier of knife we're looking at. This is a semi-custom that is made in Poland. We are looking at a quality and price tier that is similar to Brown knives in the USA, Koenig knives in the USA, right? The quality matches even Shirogorov knives out of Russia. So, if you're expecting to be able to pick this knife up for a couple $100, it's not going to happen. But these knives aren't for everybody, and I want everybody to know who's watching exactly what you're watching. This is a really nice knife, and I can tell you right off the bat, if you're wondering, is it made to the same level, the same tier, the same quality as the other Herman knives? Yes, it's very good. In fact, it might actually be the best EDC profile in the Herman line. I'm going to be linking Herman knives and Polish Custom Knives right down below. That's actually where this came from. Polish Custom Knives sent it in for me to take a look at. So thank you so much to Polish Custom Knives and Herman Knives by extension for allowing me to share this with everybody. Yeah, check them out. You can head on over there and take a look at the entire available list of Herman knives if you want to. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife before we do some size comparisons. Overall length of the Vespertilio coming in at it's about 7.35. Cutting edge, blade length is coming in at about 3 1/4. Cutting edge, about 3 1/8. Let's do a size comparison with another Herman knife. I own a lot of Herman knives, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, not only do I EDC these things, this is probably my favorite one to EDC out of my collection, and that's the Sting. Not only do I collect them, but I also carry them. So this is the one it compares to the most, and this is the one that I've always thought was probably the best EDC profile until I started checking out the Vespertilio. It's very close. The Vespertilio is a little shorter, but it has a blade shape that I like a little better for day-to-day, really very close. So that's what you're looking at there for size comparison. The closest match for a Herman knife. Let's do some size comparison up against some more common knives. Any custom scales you can find down in the description, listed under Original Go and others. Up against the 8010, obviously much bigger. Up against the 8020.5, now that's a closer match for sure. This is very, very similar in overall size to the 8020.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3, much closer to the size of the Para 3, absolutely. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Benchmade Bug Out, much closer to the size of the Bug Out. How's the action? If you are familiar with Herman knives and you've handled them before, then you're going to know exactly how this feels. Just takes a little bit of encouragement to get the blade down, but that's how I like it. It is super smooth and very nice, very easy to flip. Even a little bit of that Herman sing that we get. You might not be picking it up in the mic, but it absolutely has that Herman sing. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful action and a beautiful detent. God, that is good. The flipper tabs appear pokey, and they are if you get them in the wrong spot, but if you take a look here, all corners of this flipper tab have been beautifully knocked down. This is a very finished product, and what I mean by that is this isn't a knife that looks really nice and then you get it in hand and realize that a lot of the corners are hard 90-degree angles that are unpleasant to the touch. This is not the case at all here. Every inch of this knife, every just little teeny tiny space on this knife has been knocked down and polished and machined in a way that is comfortable to the hand. And it's also nice on the eyes. So truthfully, the action is beautiful. The access to that titanium recessed lock bar is also very, very nice. There's no double clutch and the blade simply falls down to the thumb. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. About as perfect as you could ask a flipper to be. How about carry profile? So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. We're looking at very similar thickness, but it's important to point out that these are contoured, right? Which is another element I want to point out here. The machines required to machine titanium and contour it are a lot more expensive than the ones that are just do the flat titanium, right? This is something that was pointed out to me by Transparent Knives, and I did not originally know that. So they are using machines that will contour the titanium, and that's something that you should take note of if you're questioning, is it really going to be worth the money? And to a lot of people, that element, even if it does cost Herman Knives more to do it, that element is not important to them, right? But it does factually cost more money. Regardless of how you feel about it, or if it's your preference or not, it does cost them more money to do it that way. And you have to consider, right, ensuring these things, maintaining them, right? It's all part of the business that they operate. So I like to factor those in. You don't have to, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that that is factually present when they're making these knives. So about the same, but the contoured scales there, adding some additional comfort ergonomically. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is a beautifully easy knife to carry. Definitely about the same overall length as the Para 3. Not quite as tall, even including the flipper tab. Really, it carries like an absolute dream. Let's go ahead and I think we're going to weigh it. So for materials right here, we are looking at Rockwell MagnaCut that's been hardened to about 62. Right? There's a wide range for MagnaCut. Some people say, no, it absolutely has to be 64. It absolutely does not have to be 64, right? Geometry plays a massive role in the performance of any blade, as per Laren Thomas, who is the person who invented MagnaCut, right? And fortunately for people who like to min-max on performance, the cutting geometry of a Herman knife is very, very good. See, these are flat ground blades that are not super thick to begin with, right? And it comes down to a beautifully thin, very performance-oriented edge there. So we have 62 MagnaCut. It's important to realize that these knives often will come in LMAX, M390, M398, right? And a wide variety of finishes. So in this configuration, this knife is pretty expensive, but less expensive configurations exist. For example, if you get an absolutely plain Jane titanium and LMAX blade, it's probably going to cost substantially less than something like this that's got a little bit of a nicer polish on the blade. It's in MagnaCut and it's got a little ano on the frame, right? So we'll talk about pricing here in just a bit, but that's what we're looking at for materials. And then you absolutely do have a titanium pocket clip, titanium backspacer, and a titanium recessed liner. So the weight on this guy, so I having some issues there with the scale. There we go. Weight on this guy comes in at 3.77 ounces, which is an absolutely magnificent weight and very nearly a 1-to-1 ratio when we're comparing total blade length to total weight of knife. The balance on this knife is a little bit back of the pivot, not quite dead center on that primary choil there, as I refer to it as the primary choil, but very close to the pivot. And the end result is a knife that is comfortable in hand and easy to carry. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. Now, all Herman knives, well, actually, they should all come with their own pivot tool, and I can't remember if they sent me this one or not, but they do come, generally speaking, with their own pivot tool. But the actual pivot, it's not required that you use their pivot tool. I believe their pivot is a simple T20, which is fantastic. I mean, come on. Let's take a look here. Yeah, that's a T20 there. And it's captive. Look at that. That's real nice. Glad they did it. Now, the rest of these are T6. Wish they were T8. They're not. It's okay. What I do like is they go all the way through the other side, and so that you're not having to look at an ugly, shaved-off screw head, they actually round them. So they look like little ball bearings. And maybe you don't like that. I think that's a nice way to finish that off. And the benefit here is that there are only 3 frame screws total. So you just take them out. They go all the way through the other side. It's going to take so much to back one screw out. There's basically no chance of losing a screw unless you're just extremely negligent and you're not paying attention to the fact that your knife has this screw sticking way. It's just not going to happen. People fear stripping the threads on the inside of titanium. While I recognize that that's certainly a possibility, I have never heard of that happening. I have literally never heard of that happening to anyone's knife. So as long as you don't have 30 Gatorades before you back a screw out, then you should be good to go. that's not something that's going to happen. I'm going to call this minimal hardware. We have two T6 screws for the pocket clip, and that's really it. These knives are beautifully simple to take apart and maintain, and the tolerances are obviously within 1/1000th of an inch, so they're going to come back together the same way every single time. Great stuff. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness on the Vespertilio coming in at 120 thousandths. It says 121. I'm almost certain it's 120 thousandths. So chalk that up to error on the calipers there. Yeah, let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes here. So this is I'd call this a medium-sized EDC knife, and most of the time I don't like ergonomic designs where my pinky is slipping off the edge, but this isn't such an aggressive ramp that I feel like I'm not getting fully locked in here. And most of the time with this knife, I'm not gonna be hammer gripping it. Most of the time I'm gonna be using it like this, which is great. I don't know about you, everybody's usage habits are different, but I like knives I can do precision draw cuts with. I can still slice. You can see that this blade does have curvature to it. So you still have a slicing belly. You have a beautiful and very, very pointy tip. Absolutely. This is one of the most ideal blade shapes for EDC, and the only problem that I have with the Sting is that while I can do it, that curvature and the shape of the tip of the blade makes it a little bit more, I kind of have to rock up a little higher to get my draw cuts in. With this guy, no. It's got this nice little area right here. It's the same way with most sheep's foot and especially Warncliffe style blades. It's very easy to do this, right? Cutting open packages, things like that. Stuff that I normally do with a knife. It's beautifully comfortable. The contoured titanium scales with the fluting texture. They have a bunch of different textures they do, but it's very, very beautiful, very precision. Everything just looks really great. The only thing that's a little awkward about all Herman knives is the length and positioning of their pocket clips. Wow, I think we could almost cut this pocket clip in half. This one's a little bit shorter, but still, I wish it was shorter yet. I can feel it. It's not the most terrible, like, oh my gosh, but you know that it's there, right? The tips of them are pointy, but not sharp. You can see they've knocked them down. They've textured them. It's a really nice looking clip. And truthfully, functionally in and out of the pocket, it's fine because that ramp underneath is great, right? It works well. I just wish the pocket clips were a little bit shorter. Herman knives don't really they don't have any jimping on the spine. I think it would be nice to get a little bit of Spyderco PM2 style jimping on these, right? I think that would look really classy. Some Sebenza jimping, that would look really nice. But, okay, no big deal. It says Herman right here. Looks really nice. The finish on this blade is gorgeous. And, I own a lot, and I think I own 7 or 8 Herman knives. I own multiple Herman knives that are labeled as blasted or tumbled. These finishes must have more of a manual process to them, or probably the other thing that's happening is they are refining their process, because every knife that I get, even if it's listed as the same finish, is subtly different. This one, for example, is different than the finish on this guy when they're supposed to be almost the same finish. Now, this looks nice. It's kind of a hazy, cloudy, but this is a little more reflective. Maybe they are actually supposed to be different finishes, but if I remember correctly, they're actually labeled the same. So I like that Herman is either has a little bit of more of a variable process that goes into these finishes, or it's just changing the process involved with doing the finishes, because you get something a little bit unique every single time. I don't have any Herman knives that are exactly the same finish. They're all just a little bit different. I think that's cool. This also is clearly a newer edge. This must be because this guy has a nice edge and it's great, but it doesn't look like this. That's a freaking mirror polished edge. If I can get the light to actually demonstrate, what's going on there. That is a really, really nice edge, and I can tell you this thing slices like a dream. On the other side, it says MagnaCut, and that's it. Presentation on these knives is great. These are professional. They are absolutely collector enthusiast knives, but they are also built functionally. And yes, people absolutely do carry and use Herman knives. Now, I've got some super duper crazy expensive custom ones that I don't use, but my $600, $700, $800 Hermans, oh yeah, no problem. All the time, they are fantastic. Now, that's a lot of knife to lose if you lose it, obviously, but I tend to be a little bit more cognizant when I'm carrying around something that's that expensive, right? So that's kind of a decision that you have to make for yourself. If you've never bought a super duper expensive knife and you feel like you might lose it, then maybe not, right? But if you feel confident in your ability to keep track of the more expensive items on your person, then maybe so. If you do choose to carry and use these knives, you will be blown away. This is the type of thing that changes people, right? You roll the dice once and then you carry it and you go, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. I'm screwed because now I love this, right? Really, just such a nice size, such a nice weight. Not small enough that you're going to forget about it and run it through the washing machine. It'll survive. But it's not small enough that you're going to forget about it. But it's not big enough that you feel like you're carrying too much knife for anything, right? Enough blade to do most things that most people do with knives. Backspacer, we have that typical sort of V crest that comes to the end, what we see on most Herman knives. It's slightly different, almost a greenish bronze contrast here. Another element that usually adds character to each individual knife is they generally do the clips and backspacer slightly different. And even the ano that they apply to these things is slightly different. I've had bronze ano Herman knives, and sometimes it's more flat, sometimes it's more reflective, and they do so many different shades and reflectivity levels in between, so you're never really gonna have something that anybody else has. And if somebody else does have it, there'll be subtle differences, but very few people will have the exact same Herman as you, and I think that's really cool. If you're gonna spend that much money, it's nice to know that you're getting something that's at least semi-unique. There's no lanyard hole. Who cares? Except for the lanyard people. Sorry. I know you guys care. There's no lanyards on these. We talked about the clip. The clip does work. It's just a little bit awkward. They always polish the pivots, which I think looks really nice. I've always been a big fan of the pivots. We have a stop pin that's located in its traditional position and tons of shouldering there. Really nice. Absolutely no blade play up, down, left, or right. I've never had an issue with lockup on a Herman. You can hear it singing there. Really nice. The geometry on the lockup is great. It looks like it's engaging incredibly early, but if we take a look at the actual, where that lock bar is sitting, it's about where you'd want it to be, right? They even polished all of this is just polished. Really, really good looking. No double clutch, no pivot lash ever. I've never experienced that. Super smooth and consistent in here. Really nice. Perfect centering. No detent lash. Vespertilio is nice. Now, if you have the mindset of, if I'm going to spend that much money, I'm getting one of their bigger knives because bigger equals more valuable and I just can't get rid of that thought process, that's okay. Part of my brain works that way too. But if you're looking for a Herman knife and you want that, that extra prestigious, just kind of the essence of something like this, it's not cheap to manufacture something in Poland, right? And Herman Knives is not a massively large-scale operation. He is able to pump out quite a few knives, right? But this isn't Kershaw. They're not pumping out 1,000 knives a day, right? That's not what's happening here. These are still it's still a small-scale operation, and there's still quite a few manual processes here. And the amount of work it would take just to offer the variety that Herman offers. Have you looked at his line? It's insane. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? So generally when we see drops, they seem to drop anywhere from 10 to 15 knives at a time, maybe a few more, right? They've branched out a little bit. Periodically we see them on DLT trading, but largely the central hub for Herman Knives is going to be Polish custom knives. Price range on this knife right here, what you're looking at is about an $800 configuration roughly, right? I say roughly because there's so many little teeny tiny things that can affect the price. If you want to know what the absolute base price on these is, my guess is it's probably right around $650 USA dollars. And that's going to be with a plain Jane, very similar actually to this, but with an LMAX or M390 blade. You get M398 on there, you get MagnaCut on there, you get a shinier finish, you get some ano, and that starts racking up, and getting a little bit more pricey. Is it worth the price? Yes, definitely. Like comparing apples to apples here, right? We don't compare these with Wii knives, right? We don't compare, well, I can get MagnaCut and titanium. Yeah, it's the same thing over and over again. You're reducing the overall value of the thing simply to the materials used, but you're ignoring the processes, the geographic location in which they are created, right? And how long it takes to create individual knives, right? Everything that's involved there. I think these are easily worth the price, and they are incredibly competitive in execution with companies like Koenig, companies like Brown, like Shirogorov, Holt, right? That's the territory we're in. So if you're looking in that price range, yes, I absolutely recommend this to you. If you're just starting to climb the ladder, right? If your most expensive purchase was 150, 200 bucks, right? Or especially if you're still in budget territory, then obviously not. There's a lot of ladder climbing left that you need to do to figure out if this is the territory that you want to be in. You do not need to graduate into this territory, and I like to say this periodically, especially to new viewers. The goal of my channel is not to convince everybody to buy really, really expensive knives. The goal of my channel is to help people understand what's available at certain price tiers and how competitive it is so that they can make that choice for themselves. If you're already in this territory, holy moly, you need a Herman knife. They're really, really great. If you're not here yet, which you may never get to, no, I would suggest exploring a less expensive territory and deciding what it is you like and ultimately whether or not you want to proceed. Once you get to a certain part of the ladder, it's perfectly fine to just stay right there, right? So I want to make that clear before I place this knife into the playlist I'm going to put it in, which number one is recommended knives, but asterisk, it's for people who have graduated into this territory and know exactly what they're looking for, right? I'm also going to put it into my favorite knives of all time because I just think that, the combination of elements here and the fact that it just makes for a truly wonderful EDC knife. I think the Vespertilio, which is a real shocker. I remember looking at it the first time and thinking, yeah, okay, whatever. But man, after carrying it and enjoying it for a bit, yeah, this is one of my favorite knives. Really cool stuff. I think kind of an underdog with the Herman line here. So anyways, thanks again to Polish Custom Knives for letting me take a look at this and sharing this with people. This is mine, but probably not for long. Oh, hint, hint, wink, wink, right? You might see this knife return in an upcoming event, and perhaps one day it could be yours. So stay tuned. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.